Okay, everyone. So I am actually on a wee bit of a vacation of sorts at a little resort in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota on a lovely, lovely lake. I'm gonna film a little tour of the place I'm at and put that up for our patrons as their exclusive monthly video. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. But while I was here, I just wanted to talk about video game stuff because I'm surrounded by people that don't really play video games and I'm going a little stir crazy. And because I really like streaming and talking about games, I just wanted to do that. I realize now this sounds probably kind of sad that I'm on vacation and I'm still like putting up cameras to talk to a camera about video games, but it's because I love this, and that's like this is part of how I relax is by talking about video games. But no one here really talks about video games, so this is what I'm gonna do. That being said, I wanted to talk about Black Myth Wukong because we actually got some new gameplay from it that looks pretty fire. I mean, you can see it on screen here. This is the VGC footage that they dropped. It continues to just look graphically outstanding, and we got a bunch of new information about it, some interviews from the devs and discussions about what the game is trying to do and trying to be. So I just thought I would run through it and offer my thoughts. I mean, Black Myth Wukong seems like it's going to be a big deal. Joel Raptor on our podcast the other week was saying how he expects this to be the next sort of Helldivers Pal World phenomenon, like it's just going to pop off and be huge. And I think it will be. I'm not sure if it'll be quite on the scale of like Helldivers or Pal World, just because I think the niche that this is fitting into is a little bit tighter than those. But it very well could explode. I mean, you've seen games like Elden Ring blow up in popularity, so there's no reason this couldn't also end up being massive, because I think it has all the hallmarks of a game that could be huge. I mean, graphically it looks stunning. All of the preview events and people that have actually played the game have said it's tremendous. And, you know, people have asked me, like, are you going to do a skeptical look video on this game? And I think we will eventually, but I really don't think there's a whole lot to be hyper concerned with here. Like, a lot of people have played this game. Even at Summer Game Fest that Jacob and I went to, the game was there. You could play it. It was, extremely well received there. And then Joel Raptor even played it at Gamescom last year, said that it was tremendous, had a great showing. And I've never heard anybody that's played this game that is like, no, I really wasn't that impressed. Like, there's plenty of games at these preview events that leave people kind of unenthused or unimpressed. And this has just never been one of them. Every time somebody's gotten their hands on it, they are super stoked. So I think that there's good reason to be excited for it. Maybe not hyped, because I think hype just gets you, like, it doesn't do a whole lot for you. But excited and intrigued is certainly, I think, fair here, because I think it looks very, very good. That being said, the game hasn't been without its fair share of confusion or controversy kind of in quotation marks. For example, with confusion, there's been sort of two sides of discussion with Black Myth Wukong. There's the journalists who have played it and said it plays like a Soulslike game, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, that's fine. People love Souls-like games because they're very, very good. But the developers are insistent that this is not really a Souls-like game. It's something else. It's different. Perhaps more like Sekiro. It's less of like an action RPG and more of a linear thing. And at the end of the day, I really don't think it matters that much. Like, if the game is good, who cares what little category you can slide it into? Like, I think most people, when they're throwing out the term Souls-like nowadays, they just mean it's a game that's kind of tough and it's got big bosses. That's all it really means. And I know that there's a stricter definition of Souls-like, but I think most people just casually say Souls-like when it's a game that has a lot of bosses and is kind of difficult. And I think that that's the sort of casual parlance that people are exhibiting when they call this Souls-like. In terms of actual mechanics, it's definitely much closer to like a Sekiro than it is to an Elden Ring. But that being said, I think it doesn't really matter as long as the game plays well. In terms of controversy, you might have somehow missed this because it was sort of an attempted big story. It's kind of weird and difficult to describe. So as you can see here, there's an article from IGN. This popped up late last year and was followed up again like a few months ago, or maybe a month or two ago. But it's been a consistent thing of reporting where these, like IGN has gone back and found social media posts or other things from some of the game's creators and said that they're sexist, and therefore maybe we should be cautious about supporting this game because the developers are sexist for various reasons. And you can see like there's some weirdly translated things. Even in this picture you see here, this doesn't really make sense. Like when you read it, this is an example of the overt sexism of one of the game's lead developers. And you can see like, I'm gonna read it. I want to expand my circle and hire more people. Get licked until I can't get an erection, okay? I want to be honest and make a trailer and be praised as the savior of the industry. The 13-minute B1 looks like it was carelessly pieced together. Random values, stiff landings, smaller bodies move lithely, large bodies lethargic. An unmolted golden cicada, an undynamic body of water. Like, he goes through and writes this kind of poem, I guess, about the game. But even these quotes, like, they don't really make any sense. And so I was like, as somebody that's not even like a games journalist, I was like, this doesn't really translate well. And it seems like maybe there are some misquotations here. So what I've actually done is, like, I'm taking pictures and I'm putting it into ChatGPT 4.0. And I'm just asking it, can you translate the text in this image? And every time I've done this, the translation comes back different than what IGN has in this piece. So I don't know if their translation is the most accurate and it just doesn't really make any sense, or if it's like I just straight up Google Translate and they tried that. So like right here, this is the ChatGPT explanation. I'm gonna screen cap this so Jacob can put it in the video. So as you can see here, I asked it to translate this image. So I sent a picture of it and it translates it, dictates it, scribes it down, and then it translates. And their translation in the IGN article was, I want to expand my circle and hire more people, get licked until I can't get an erection. Okay. And then the translation from ChatGPT doing it is, I wanted to expand the circle and recruit more people, but got beaten until I couldn't move. Got beaten up, then hailed as a savior of the industry. So it's just a different translation. Another example of this happening, if I can close this down, is back here where you can see this post. The snake spirit is different from what I imagined, but if I cover the bottom half with my hand, it's still possible to jerk off. Again, doesn't really make a lot of sense, so I asked ChatGPT to translate this as well, and the translation that it spat back was, the snake spirit is quite different from what I imagined, which matches, but using the lower half to cover it up, or to cover it with my hand, it's not impossible to accept. I can read. The snake spirit is quite different from what I imagined, but using the lower half to cover it with my hand, it's not impossible to accept. The point with all of this is that there very well may be some weird statements here, maybe even sexist statements, but they seemingly have intentionally gone through and cherry-picked examples that they could mistranslate effectively to sound really, really weird and bad. And it just comes off as like, I don't even know what the official term is. It comes off as them hunting for something to be pissed about. It comes off as them hunting for some scandal and trying to gin up some controversy even when it's not there. Because already these quotations are a bit of a stretch. It's like, I'm not sure if the game is worth canceling over these statements from one or two developers, even if these are one-to-one translations. But then when you take it independently and you try translating it yourself, which takes 10 seconds to do with a tool like ChatGPT, all of a sudden the translations are totally different and don't come off as perverted at all. Like, it just comes off as like weird poetry and angsty teenage writing. And so it's not convincing to me. The people that are like, therefore we should cancel the game and the whole thing is sexist, and trying to create sort of a redo of Hogwarts Legacy or something, trying to get this game actually canceled. It just comes off as pretty disingenuous and even dishonest, because a lot of the translations I've not been able to duplicate or replicate at all. And if multiple different tools, like granted, Google Translate's not very good. ChatGPT's translations, in my experience, better. When I've asked some of my friends to speak other languages, it tends to do a very, very good job. But even then, I've never been able to replicate the quotations that they have in here, where it's super raunchy. It seems like they are maybe fudging the translations a bit, allegedly, hypothetically, whatever. It just comes off to me as if they're trying too hard to find some sort of controversy about this game. It's another example of we can't have anything nice. If anybody's excited for any game, you can't be excited for it because you're just not allowed to. There has to be some reason to be outraged about everything. And when there isn't a legitimate reason to be upset about something, we'll just figure something out. We'll make something up and find some reason to be pissed about it. Setting that aside, because I'm sick of that one. One of the other controversies that's been brought up with Black Myth Wukong was the recent delay or postponing of the release of the Xbox version of the game. As you can see on screen here, this is another article describing this. And basically, after they dropped a trailer at SGF this June, they decided to also announce that they were not going to be releasing the Xbox versions at the same time. As you can see, they posted a little bit of text very briefly saying, PC and PS5 users can enjoy the full game starting August 20th. We are currently optimizing the Xbox X and S version to meet our quality standards so it won't release simultaneously with the other platforms. We apologize for the delay and aim to minimize the wait for Xbox users. We will announce the release date as soon as it meets our quality standards. And it's another example, honestly, of a big game that would have been a huge help for a platform like Xbox forcing themselves to postpone their launch because they just can't get it running. And without a doubt, this is because of the Xbox Series S. It's the same thing that happened with Baldur's Gate 3, where they were slated to release on all major platforms and consoles at the same time, PC and then console. But they ended up not being able to release it on Xbox because the Series S wasn't able to run the split screen co-op thing that they were doing. So they just said, we can't get it working. It doesn't have enough memory for what we need to do. So we're just our hands are tied until we figure out something or completely rebuild it, whatever. And in that case, Phil Spencer gave a one-time override basically to allow them to release the game on Xbox, but have two different versions, a Series X version and a Series S version. And the reason why that's significant is because one of the promises of the Xbox Series generation was that the X and S could play the same games. It's just one console was the most powerful and the other console was not as powerful, so you'd have some visual downgrades or resolution downgrades and stuff like that, but it came in at a lower price tag, so it was kind of a fair trade-off. But we've seen consistently now multiple releases that cannot release on Xbox because they cannot scale to the PlayStation 5, Series X, and the Series S. Because the Series S is basically just a tricked out 1X from whenever that was, 2018, 2019. And as a result, it's just effectively really powerful last-gen hardware. And so if developers are going to develop for the Xbox as well, you have to develop to the lowest common denominator. And this is a well-known thing. Of course, games can be scalable. There's things like that. And some games are better suited for that scalability. But the Series X versus the Series S, the big limitation is the memory difference. And that's not something you can just quickly fix. I mean, we just did that. We've been working on this massive critique of Starfield, which, by the way, looks like it's going to be over 8 hours. Sorry, not sorry. But in that critique, we talk a little bit about the background, not a little bit, a lot about the background of BGS and some of their other games. And one of the things that comes up is the PS3 ports of, say, Fallout 3 and Skyrim. And if you don't remember that, basically the PS3 had an interesting way of breaking up memory. They had a total of 512 megabytes. Megabytes. I don't think it was megabits. It was megabytes of memory. And they had it split into 256 bytes or megabytes for games and 256 for the system, whereas the Xbox 360 had 512 just to be used by everything, kind of like how you would see it on a Windows PC, where it's just totally open. And as a result, Bethesda games never ran well on PlayStation consoles, on the PS3. In fact, with this, like Skyrim specifically, if you played Skyrim for more than like an hour or two, the game would start to get slow, so freaking sluggish, and drop so many frames and stuff, you would have to completely restart your console to do another session, because the console just didn't have enough memory to juggle it. And to fix it, we talk in the critique about one of the engineers that worked with Bethesda at the time, and he was like, to fix this would require basically creating an entirely separate version of the game, like recoding tons of stuff to make it work on the PS3, and it just wasn't that practical to do. And this is a similar thing where the Series S is just so significantly behind what like the PlayStation 5 and the Series X are able to do, that for a lot of these devs, it just doesn't really make sense to prioritize it. Especially when they already know that Larian got a special override. Granted, they were Game of the Year last year, but they got a special override from Phil. So maybe they can get an override from Phil this time around. The difference is, of course, that with Baldur's Gate 3, they just didn't bring the co-op to the Series S version, but it was still Baldur's Gate 3. In this case, it seems like they just literally can't get the game to run decently on the Series S. So in that case, I don't think Phil is going to give an override to allow the sale only on the Series X, because the whole idea is that it runs on everything. So it just seems like it's probably not coming to the Xbox anytime soon, if ever. I mean, they might just end up straight up canceling the Xbox version if it's really that big of a deal to get it working. But that's a big crazy thing that we could talk about forever. Once again, like, I understand that a lot of people appreciate the Series S for being a more budget-friendly option, but at the end of the day, like, if the game is just, if games are too demanding and the console can't keep up with it, that's worth discussing. Like, what most people have said is that the Series S has held back this console generation because any cross-platform devs have to develop for the lowest common denominator, for the weakest thing. You have to make sure it can run on that. In the same way, like if your game also runs on mobile, you have to develop it for mobile and then bring it to PC and consoles, whatever else. But it's going to be limited by the weakest link. And that is not at all a controversial thing to say. Like, the Series S is objectively the weakest console on the market, other than like the Switch. And as a result, it's going to hold back all the other big players, and that's just the reality of the situation. I think, maybe it was a great, epic business plan move from Microsoft, and maybe they're getting tons of advantages from it. But I think the broader industry has seen games not really push the boundaries as much as a result of that, at least in part. But going back to the core point of the discussion, which was Black Myth Wukong, I think that this game has a ton of potential. I mean, this gameplay footage that you can see on screen that they just dropped is gorgeous. The particle effects are outrageous. The post-processing is tremendous. And most of the preview events and people that have tried the game already say that it tends to be more forgiving than your typical Soulsborne game, which is maybe part of the reason why it's not fair to say that it's just a straight-up Souls-like. But whether it's easier or more difficult, whether it's more approachable or less approachable, what everybody agrees on is that the game looks really good graphically. It was originally announced back in like 2020 on the Unreal Engine 4. And in 2021, they announced that they were porting it to the Unreal Engine 5, which is part of the reason it's been delayed as long as it has. I believe they said back in 2020 they wanted to release in the next 3 years. And so now they're about a year later than that, and that's probably because of this move to Unreal 5. But, I mean, the game looks outrageously good. And, it's easy for people to just dismiss graphics and say, it's about the gameplay, graphics don't matter. And I think that's generally very, very true. But I think if you have good gameplay and you have amazing graphics, you have something that can really excite a lot of people. Because graphics do matter. it's not like they totally don't matter, because it's all about presentation. Like, and frankly, when people are trying to decide what they want to spend their hard-earned dollars on, to get something that plays well and looks graphically very impressive, that is a much better value proposition for 60, 70 bucks than, well, it plays really good, but it looks like a PS4 game. And I think that a lot of more casual gamers really do care about the graphics. And I'm somebody that also appreciates good graphics. I've been really frustrated this generation that it feels like things have largely plateaued. I mean, even recently we did that deep dive into Assassin's Creed Shadows. And one of the things with that is that I'm kind of frustrated that it looks like there haven't been a ton of graphical improvements over like Valhalla. There's been a couple of little things here and there. They've focused on dynamics and weather systems and stuff like that we've still yet to see. But I think it feels like this generation is basically just giving us souped up PS4 and Xbox One games instead of really truly next generation titles. And this, on the other hand, feels like a true next generation game. And that's part of the reason I think so many people are excited for it. I just think it looks great. So I'm very intrigued by it. I'm excited to see what the game is like. Of course, I've not had the chance to play it. It comes out, I believe, August 20th. So we're in the home stretch. I mean, a little bit over a month away. And if they can really stick this landing, I think that we could have a new big player in the industry, because everybody that's touched it has loved it, and all they have to do is stick this landing, and it seems like they will, because again, it's pretty rare for a game to have outstanding previews every chance or every time that it goes out to any conference or media event, and then for the game to be bad. It's pretty rare that happens. The only occasions I can think of stuff like that happening was like games that end up being horribly monetized, but they kept it hidden during the preview cycles, or like the game is good, but it's all like pay to win or something, you know. You could even say something like a Battlefront 2. That game probably previewed really well back in 2017, looked graphically amazing. I mean, even today, you go back and look at some of the footage of Battlefront 2, and it looks outrageously good. But when we actually got the game and we realized, oh, it's all basically pay to win, and it's filled with all these gambling mechanics, and it's just insanely over monetized, that then, you know, really changed the conversation. But initially in those preview events, it probably was received super, super well. I don't foresee that happening here personally. But you never know. Like, I still think pre-ordering games from relatively unknown studios is always just, it's more risk than it's worth. I really don't see the benefit unless there's like a super badass collector's edition statue that you want just for the sake of having the statue. Other than that, like, I don't see why anybody should be pre-ordering much of anything. I think the few exceptions would be something like, you know, Rockstar Games. If you get the chance to pre-order a collector's edition of GTA 6, I think there's a pretty high likelihood that game is really, really good. But that's because there's been like decades of evidence building up their reputation as a really capable and qualified studio. So I think you are okay in being confident in that quality. But with that being said, I mean, I just think Black Myth Wukong looks awesome. I'm excited to see how they handle this, and all told, with all of the controversies and things associated with this game, I really don't think that there's much going on that's of significant note. It seems like a lot of it is contrived. A lot of it is people just trying to be pissed about stuff that is already a bit of a stretch, and then it seems like even beyond that, there's some examples of potentially, I don't even know how to phrase it. There's, I think, plenty of examples of people trying to go at this game and really grasping at straws to do so. Whether they're intentionally mistranslating things or just coincidentally only selecting the worst possible translations of stuff to meet their points and to help back up their preconceived notions. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but either way, I'm not really convinced by it. But that being said, I'm really excited for it. Let me know what you think of Black Myth Wukong in the comments. I'll be back doing regular streams this coming week, so I'm not going anywhere. We're just taking a little bit of a break. Make sure to head over to the main channel, subscribe there, because we got the big Starfield video coming. And like I said, if you want exclusive videos and stuff, check out the Patreon, because we're doing that now, and that's helping us bankroll some of the big projects. But thank you for watching. I love you all desperately. I'll see you in the next one. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye. He took my thing. Red flag.